Hope you're doing good. How you doing? That was kind of we're in the second part of the week, kind of heading downhill one. How are you doing? All right. Hey, I only have 3 books left, and they're all Wave of Courage. And I'm going to tell the Wave of Courage story tomorrow, so you're going to want to buy the book now, because after I tell the story, you're going to want the book, and they're going to be gone. So see me afterwards. Still $10, only 3 left. 3 left. Commercial over. Okay. Being not ashamed. I know we're getting to the point where I have said this. What is this? Talk number 6. 6. I apologize to the front row for any of you that got spit on. This little lisp comes with a little spray. If you've ever been to SeaWorld, welcome to the soak zone. That's this area right here. Don't think you're safe 3 rows back. If I get excited, I can do 10 feet. Don't worry. Just feel like it's a little bit of the spirit coming out and just touching you. Yes. So I apologize for anybody that's taken a little bit of that back to their cabin with them. Hey, we've talked about what it means to decide to be not ashamed and what the gospel is, and that how important this book is in explaining the gospel to you, in knowing the gospel, understanding it, being ready to talk about it if somebody was to approach you and you didn't have this book with you. And for some of you, it might be the whole idea of actually deciding this week to choose the gospel, to make Jesus the Lord of your life, to say, I've heard enough about this Jesus. I've been hearing how much he loved me. I heard what he did for me on the cross, and I want to choose somebody to get me through life. And I'm comparing this Jesus with everything else the world's throwing at me, and I'm starting to realize he is the one true Lord, the one hope, the one truth, the one way into heaven, and that you would make, we want to be young adults, you would make the most adult decision you could ever make, and that would be to decide where you want your eternity to be and who you want to be your go-to person throughout this life. And would it be the person that actually created you and set you apart for something great before you even got here? And would you be willing to go on that journey with him? So that's why we're here. We want to get together and make those kind of decisions, because they are life-changing decisions. If you have a Bible, and I hope you do, I want you to turn to Ephesians 2. New Testament stuff here. Ephesians. Galatians. Ephesians. And when we read the scripture, you're going to be asking yourself 2 questions. Where would I be in this story if I was there at that time? And what is God saying to me today? Ephesians. Woo! Remember I talked about Timothy and him being a really young preacher and putting a really crazy church in a big, scary town? That town was called Ephesus. And so when Paul writes this letter to the Ephesians, he's writing to the Christians that are trying to be Christians, trying to be not ashamed, trying to be in the game, trying to be bold in the town of Ephesus, because Ephesonians are Ephesians. So Ephesians 2. The greatest thing about being a Christian and choosing Jesus as the Lord of your life is his love, his grace, and his forgiveness. We need his forgiveness. We are all sinners saved only by Jesus' grace. And if you haven't called on Jesus' grace, you are still in the I'm just a sinner. And sinners have a hard time inheriting the kingdom of God unless they ask for that grace and mercy that Jesus is willing to offer you if you choose him as Lord. And the greatest thing about that love and that mercy is it's endless. You basically can't out-sin God's love. You can walk up to him with your list of wrongs and say, here it is, Jesus. It's a long one. And you might be thinking, I've already done too many wrong things in my life for Jesus to want to have anything to do with me. And Jesus is not about your past. He is not about your past. He is all about your future. And so he gets out his cloth and he wipes your slate clean. And you look pure in his eyes, and he says, now go out today and try and keep this slate clean. But if you happen to get a few marks on it again, just bring me your list. And time again, if you ask for forgiveness, his love, his grace, and his mercy will clean that slate and have you start over again. I don't know anybody on this earth that I have wronged in some way that has completely forgiven and forgotten what I did to them. We, by nature, hold inside of us those things that people have done to us that have wronged us. I want you to consider a Jesus who we make mistakes in front of every day, willing to wipe your slate clean, not only forgive you, but forget what you had done wrong and let you start over again. That's a friend you need to have. It's called unconditional love. Unconditional love means whatever the condition is, whatever you do, it doesn't matter. He still loves you. And so of all the people out there you could choose to follow and be your go-to person, I would choose the person who loves you unconditionally, forgives you every time you ask him, wipes your slate clean, makes you saved, offers you a place in heaven, and showed you how much he loved you on a cross and died for you. That would be a great choice, that you could have that for the rest of your life, this ability to be forgiven. I remember when I was in 8th grade, they were doing the President Physical Fitness thing at my school. This is a long time ago. And one of the events was the 100-yard dash, and it's probably 100 meters now. But it was a 100-yard dash, and you had to run it for a certain time. And I had a dentist appointment that day, so by the time I got to school later in the day, they had already done the running, and the 8th graders had already run, and the 7th graders had already run. So here I show up late as an 8th grader, and they say, well, we got to get your time, so you're going to run with a bunch of 6th graders. Well, as an 8th grader and being kind of an athlete back then, I know it doesn't look like it now, but like back then, I was a lot faster than the 6th graders. And here's how the thing was set up. They had like maybe 8 lines of people, 8 running, and you ran past the 100-yard mark, and there was a person there with a stopwatch. And the minute you crossed, they clicked the stopwatch. And you went over and you got your time, and you went over and told these ladies over at the table what your time was, and they recorded it. And there were some fast kids, 100-yard dash. We had some 10-8s, 11 flats, 11-1, 11-2, some really fast kids. And then we had some 13s, 14, that kind of stuff. Well, when I run with these 6th graders, I win by like 20 feet. I mean, I literally just mow these kids down because I'm that much older and I'm faster. So I win. And everybody's like, whoa, I wonder what Keith, whoa, that was fast. He was flying. You see how much he won by? So I go over to the lady. I'm all excited. I go, what was my time? She goes, 13-2. And I go, no, that was me that finished first, ahead of everybody. Remember that? Yeah, right here, it's 13-2. And I'm like, am I that slow? Thought I was fast. So I go over to the ladies, and a bunch of people, my friends, have gathered around now. Keith, what was your time? What was your time? And the lady says, what was your time? And because of the peer pressure and the people around me and everybody excited for my time, I looked at this lady and I said, 11-2. Nobody even questioned it because I had won by so much. She writes down 11-2. Everybody's, yeah, Keith, way to go. A week later, in an all-school assembly, they're announcing the 4 people who are going to represent our school at the district track meet in what's called the 440 relay. This is the big event. It might be the 4x100. I don't know what they'd call it now. But it was a 440 relay, and it's the biggest event at the track meet. It's the last event, and you can almost lose the whole track meet. But if you win the 440 relay, you leave as kings and queens. Your school leaves as the leaders. It's a relay where 4 people take a baton, and you hand it to a person, and that person hands it to another person, and they hand the baton, and they run around the track. And if you go around the track fastest and hold on to that baton, then your team wins. So I'm in this all-school assembly, and they're announcing to come up on stage the 4 people that are going to represent our school in the 440 relay, and it happens to be the 4 people with the fastest time in the 100-yard dash from a week earlier. And so the first person they announced, Tim, with his time of 10-8, and everybody's like, yeah, Tim, that guy can fly. That guy, and everybody's applauding. He goes up on the stage. And with the time of 11 flat, Gary, and Gary's, oh, yeah, Gary, oh, he's awesome. He runs up on the stage. And with the time of 11-1, Doug, and Doug, oh, that guy's an athlete, runs up on the stage. And all of a sudden I hear this. And with the time of 11-2, Keith Poletiek, No, wait a minute. And everybody's cheering and they're pushing me, get up there on the stage. And at that point, I should have said, no, I got something to say. I'm not really that fast. I lied. I should have said that. But the people are cheering and they're pushing me up and they're just yelling. So I go up on the stage and keep this lie. And I'm standing there with these 3 other dudes and they're just cheering us. And I should have said, wait a minute. But I didn't. Do you know how in over my head I was with these guys? Let me tell you about these guys. Tim eventually made the Olympic water polo team for 1980, the team that didn't go to the Olympics because of boycotting, but he was on the roster to possibly go and represent our country in Russia. Gary won his weight class in wrestling for Iowa University, NCAA, for his weight bracket at one point. Doug ended up playing 3 years middle linebacker for the Philadelphia Eagles, and Keith Poletiek, the liar. That's the team right there. That's what I was up against. And we got to this practice. We really only got one practice in, and I should have got to that practice and said, guys, I'm not your guy. But I didn't say anything. And I learned in this relay there's only a couple rules. One of them was there were 2 words you had to know, go and stick. Go and stick. And the other rule was that you're standing at the beginning of about a 30-foot area, and when the guy comes up with the stick and says, go, you start running. And when you want the stick, you put your hand back and you go stick, and he puts the stick in your hand, and you run to the next guy and say, go, stick, go, stick, go. And in that 30 feet, you have to be able to transfer the stick from one person to the other, and the team that takes that stick with them the whole time and finishes the race wins. That's all I know. We get to the track meet, and it's starting to buzz towards the end of the track meet because it's a really close track meet, and it's going to come down to the 440 relay could determine which school wins this whole track meet. And at that point, I'm looking around at other people in the track meet that are there, and I'm realizing there are people here that represent my school that are probably faster than me in the 100-yard dash, and for the sake of my entire school, I should probably put up my hand and raise my hand and say, wait a minute. But instead, off I stroll out onto the track, scared to death that they're going to figure out how slow I am. In fact, I'm the second person I have realized when I come around the corner, there's an exit to the stadium. And if they realize how slow I am, I'm just going to keep going out that exit and run for the rest of my life while 3 guys in an entire school chase me down. I'm scared to death, and all of a sudden I hear a gun shoot. And I duck because I think they figured me out. And it's not. It's the start of the race, and the first guy comes running around. And he says, go, so I go. And I say, stick, and he hands me the stick. And I take off. I'm running for fear of my life. I might have been running the fastest I've ever run in my life just out of fear. I'm looking at the exit and watching the other people. Where am I going? Am I going to make the turn or go straight? I don't know. I start to make the turn. I get up to the next guy. I say, go. He's so fast. When I say go, he takes off. He's faster than me when he says go, and I'm in a full run. I'm like, come back, come back. He's yelling, stick, stick. I don't even know how I got it to him. Somehow, at the last second, get him this stick. He takes it and hands it to the last guy, and he goes around the track, and we win this whole thing by 20 feet. The place goes crazy. Everybody's cheering. Even other schools are cheering because of our time. It was so great. I'm so happy I'm still alive. Even the lady that was judging my little section there where I handed the baton off, she's cheering and jumping up and waving her flag and running to the judges' table. And then we hear this over the loudspeaker: hold all scores, hold all times in the 440 relay. You see, in that 30 feet, that all I have to do is get a baton from my hand into the hands of somebody else. By the time I finally put it into his hand, my foot lands halfway over the line, and we're disqualified. Move us from first place to last, take our time off the board, we lose. Because I stepped over the line. Because I shouldn't even have been there. I let my ego and my pride take over. My integrity and my truth and all the things I was running my race of life towards my Jesus for went away because I was focused on myself, and so I disqualified our entire school. I hope you never feel that feeling. I hope you get yourself to the point where you're so much in tune with Jesus that if the opportunity to tell something like a little lie, you can avoid it, because little lies can affect hundreds of people. Here's the great thing about choosing Jesus as the Lord of your life. He wants you to run a race, fixing your eyes on Him, not worldly goals. And the greatest thing is, if you're out there running this race called life and you step over the line, if you're out there trying to be good and you make a mistake, that morning, your brother or sister say something to you, you want to say something back, and you hold your tongue, and you got a pretty good race going, and then you get to school, and that one guy that always bugs you and says the wrong thing, and you want to say something back, and you don't, and you got a good race going, and your third period class, there's an opportunity to cheat on a test, but you don't do it because you're running that race for God, and you got a good race going, and then in the afternoon, somebody says or does something, and you just spout off, or you do the wrong thing, or you give a shove, or you do some little thing. And you stumble and you mess up. You step over the line. In God's kingdom, you're not disqualified. You see, in God's kingdom, when you step over the line, you get to go up to Him and say, Jesus, I made a mistake. I went out of the boundaries. I had some sin come into my life and I gave into it. And Jesus says, well, give me that list. I'm going to wipe that one off. And we're going to start it all clean with you again today. And Keith, if you step over the line in life tomorrow, you just come see me, talk to me, ask for forgiveness, and I'll wipe that slate clean. You see, that's the greatest thing about this faith and choosing Jesus as your Lord, is He's preparing a room for you in heaven and doing everything He can to make sure you get there, including forgiving you every time you make a mistake. This world wants to disqualify you. If you choose Jesus, He wants to qualify you and bring you in and show you love like you've never felt before. Look at Ephesians 2. That little church of Christians in Ephesus trying to make it in their big city. And if any of them thought they could do it on their own, here's what Paul said to the Ephesian Christians as told to him by God. If you look at verse 8, it says, "For it is by grace you have been saved, through faith, and this not from yourselves. It is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast." You see that? Eternity, life eternal, a place in heaven is a gift given to you free by God. All you have to do is accept that free gift and spend the rest of your life running a race that He marked out for you, not that you marked out for you, and giving Him the glory for the things you do, not yourself. Isn't it great to know that in this faith, you can make mistakes, be forgiven because of His love, and He gets excited to go right back out there again with you and watch you run that race right alongside of you again. That's the greatest thing about choosing Jesus, that He'll forgive anybody. I love the story of Zacchaeus. Who's heard the story of Zacchaeus in the Bible? If you haven't, he was a little guy and nobody liked him. So if you're a little guy and nobody likes you, this is your story. Yeah, it's a great story. Zacchaeus wasn't liked in the town because he was the tax collector for the government. And he was not only a tax collector, he was a cheat and a thief. He would literally, with Roman soldiers, walk up to a house and basically knock on the door and say, we need $100 from you for taxes or you go to jail. And these people are like, well, we only have 105, but I don't want to go to jail. Take the 100. The government didn't even want $100. They wanted maybe 50. And Zacchaeus would send 50 off to the government and put 50 in his own pocket, in his own bank. And he's been doing that to everybody in the town for years, and they knew it. But they couldn't do anything about it. He's the richest guy in the town. He's got the big house on the corner. He's got everything he needs because he's been stealing from the people of the town for years. And they can't do anything about it. Do you think he's a popular guy when he walks through town? Hey, Zach, we didn't have breakfast this morning because of you. High five. No. They're like, I don't like this guy, Zacchaeus. I don't like him. Well, Zacchaeus has heard that this guy, Jesus, is going to be walking through his town. He's never seen him, but the word is out that that popular guy that's been doing some amazing thing is actually going to come through his town, and he wants to see him. I got to see this guy, Jesus. He's heard some amazing story. He heard a story that Jesus walked up to a guy whose arm had never worked. Was born with an arm that didn't work, and Jesus walked up to that guy and said, hey, put her there. And all the people around this guy are like, Jesus, don't make fun of him. You know he can't put her there. And Jesus looked at this guy and says, do you think I have the power to have you put her there? And this guy's probably thinking, well, every doctor my whole life has looked at my arm, and everyone has said it will never move ever. So why not trust this guy who's been making blind people see, and lame people walk, and dead people rise to life? And he looks in Jesus' eyes, and all of a sudden, can you imagine this man whose arm has never moved his whole life? All of a sudden, he feels a warmth and a tingle happen in it that he's never felt before. And he feels muscle growing, and blood circulating, and bone getting stronger. And he actually looks down and maybe gives a little move, and for the first time ever in his life, it moves a little bit. And then it starts to pull away from his body, and he feels strength and warmth coming into his arm for the very first time. And then all of a sudden he dares to wiggle a finger, and they start to wiggle. And then pretty soon he's got full motion in it for the very first time in his life, and maybe the first hand he ever shakes is the man with the power to make his arm move again. And that guy's going to walk through your town. Wouldn't you want to meet him? Zacchaeus did. I've got to see this Jesus. And he shows up, and when a celebrity walks through your town, everybody shows up, and it looks like a parade. There's people on both sides of the street, and they're cheering. And Zacchaeus, he's small. He gets there late. He's probably counting money. He gets there, and he can't see over the crowd because he's too short. He's jumping up. He can't see anything. He tries to push through the crowd, but the minute they see it's Zacchaeus, do you think they let him come through? No, they're like, get out of here, Zacchaeus. I got your red Rover right now, man. You're going down. He can't get through the crowd, so he looks up ahead and he sees a tree, and so he runs and he starts climbing the tree. What are you doing, Zacchaeus? I'm climbing a tree. Why? Because I want to see Jesus. Well, whatever. He climbs up in this tree and gets just high enough over the crowd that he can look down, and he sees Jesus for the first time. Incredible. And all of a sudden, in all the commotion, thousands of people cheering and Jesus walking through the town, Jesus goes, hold it right here. What do you want, Jesus? And of all the thousands of people he could look at in the crowd, Jesus' eyes turn and they go right up into a tree, looking right at Zacchaeus. And when Jesus looks up in a tree at Zacchaeus, what do 1,000 people's eyes do? They all go, woo, boop. And now the whole town is staring at Zacchaeus in a tree, which proves that Zacchaeus is a better tree climber than I am, because if that would have happened, I'd have fallen out of the tree. But he's holding on. And then Jesus says something so amazing. Might be his first time coming through this town. He says the most amazing thing. He looks at that guy of thousands in the tree and he says, Zacchaeus. He knows him by name. Because he knows us all by name. And he says, Zacchaeus, come down from that tree. I must have lunch with you today. And guys, look it up in the back. He doesn't say, I'd like to have lunch with you today. He doesn't say, hey, I hear you make a good chicken salad, and let's have lunch today. He basically says, I must have lunch with you today. And you know, Zacchaeus has got a choice. He's in this tree, and he could have looked at Jesus and said, hey, Jesus, hey, thanks for the invite, thanks, but no thanks. You see, I like my life. I like my money, and I like how I get it. And it just seems like everybody that spends 5 minutes with you, Jesus, their whole life changes, and I like my life, so I'm going to stay here in the tree. But he didn't. He did the best thing he could possibly do. He came down out of the tree and went and had lunch with Jesus. And in just one lunch, 15, 30 minutes of spending and being with Jesus, Zacchaeus' heart changes. It goes from hard to soft, from greedy to loving. Now, as he's walking off with Jesus to have this lunch, the town people are like, Jesus, you don't want to have lunch with that guy. I know you're new in the town, Jesus, but let me tell you something. You don't want to have lunch with that guy. Jesus, we're going to let you know now. We want you to know that is the rottenest guy in our whole town. That is the last person you want to go have lunch with. And Jesus basically says, he the worst? Is that the guy with the big list? Is he the one with the insurmountable list of wrongs? Is he the worst one in your town? Then that's the first person I should have lunch with. Because I came here to wipe slates clean. And if you find that story of Zacchaeus, the last verse is, don't you understand, people? Jesus said, I came to seek and save the lost. I came here for one purpose, to find lost souls who know they're sinners and need my grace to be saved, to be seen for my Father in heaven. I came here to die a horrible death so that I could get you guys into heaven. And Zacchaeus has just figured that out in one lunch. And Zacchaeus came out and said, if I've done anybody wrong, which he knew he had, I'm going to pay back everything that I've given you. And for some of you that I have really hurt, I'm going to give you 4 times back as much as I took from you. And at that point, everybody in the town was blessed and taken care of because Zacchaeus decided to spend 15 minutes with Jesus and realize why he was really here on this earth. And some experts did some study, and they said by the size of that town, and by the time Zacchaeus was done, Zacchaeus was going to be the poorest man in their whole town. He was going to be penniless, but he was going to feel like the most rich person in the town. Because he just got told by Jesus, today you get salvation, Zacchaeus. Today you get heaven because today you chose me. And I don't know what you're choosing. But if you want it all, if you want to be rich in heaven, if you want to understand this life, if you want to know why you're here on purpose, if you want to know that plan that was set for you before you got here, you don't listen to people on this earth. You call on Him. You don't make things on this earth your lords. You call on Him. You don't choose somebody else that maybe says the right thing that sounds good to you. You listen to Him. Because only He can get you into eternity and wants to get you into eternity. He wants to wipe your slate clean and have you see heaven someday. And I know that's hard to do every day. It's hard to go His direction every day. It's hard to make the right choice every day. It's hard to do the God thing every day. I remember when I went from Little League to Senior League baseball. Little League to me was always a question. How many played Little League? Little League? It's that foot on the base type baseball. You know, you get to first base and it's foot on the base. And I was like watching the pros on TV, and they're not doing foot on the base. Can you imagine a pro getting to first base and he's like, foot on the base, don't leave the base until the pitcher throws the ball across the plate. This isn't baseball. What are we doing here? This is Little League. You foot on the base. Well, after Little League, I moved to a thing called Senior League, the next level up. And that's where you get to lead off. You get to move away from the base. You can actually steal second. I know, thou shalt not steal, but in Senior League, yes, you can steal second. The only problem is, if you're off the base, and the pitcher throws the ball to first base, and the first base catches it and tags you while you're off the base, you're out. You know what they call it? Getting picked off. Isn't that scary? It's like some military term. What happened to you? I got picked off. What were you doing? I was just venturing out. I was just moving away. I was boldly going where no Little Leaguer had gone before. And then all of a sudden, picked off. We had this pitcher in our league. His name was Mike. And in 3 games, he had already picked 8 people off of first base. Because he was this left-handed pitcher, and he had this great move, because he'd stare at you at first base, then looking at home. Then back at you, home. You, home. You, home. And you're on first base going, oh, what's he doing? I don't know what he... What's he? I don't know what do you think? Oh no! Picked off. We had this kid on our team. His name was Vinny, and Vinny was kind of into himself. Vinny was one of those guys. If you said you could hit the ball 200 feet, he told you he could hit it 250. If you could run around the bases in 14 seconds, he could do it in 13. Just one of those kind of guys. And he announces in our practice, because we know we're playing Mike's team that Saturday, that if he gets on first base, he's going to show the whole world how to steal second off of this guy Mike. And we're like, yeah, if you even get on base, Vinny. Well, we actually get into a game where it's tied late in the game. We get a guy all the way around to third base, but there's 2 outs. Our best hitter is on deck waiting to come up. Unfortunately, up right before him is Vinny. We're like, Vinny, try and get on base. Guy on third, 2 outs, tie game. We could take the lead. Best hitter up next. Just try and get on base. And Vinny gets in the box. And for some reason, on Mike's first pitch, he beans Vinny in the helmet, which was hilarious. Let me tell you, if anybody needed a good in the head, it was Vinny. We're like air high-fiving Mike from the dugout. Thank you. We all wanted to do that. Thank you. Vinny strolls to first base and looks into our dugout as if to say, you know what's going to happen now. We're like, yeah, you're going to get done. Stay on the base, Vinny. Don't go off the base. Guy on third, 2 outs. Our best hitter's up. Tie game. We got a chance to take the lead. Just stay on the base. Do you think Vinny's listening? No. He starts his venturing out. He's moving away. We're like, get back on the base, Vinny. He's not listening. He's in like a Vinny coma. He's just staring at Mike, watching his every move. He knows the minute Mike throws home, he's taking off for second base. He's staring at him, he's watching, and all of a sudden Mike throws the ball to first base, and Vinny goes, ah! And he dives back, and he gets his hand on the base just before the tag. He's safe. We're like, see, Vinny? This guy's good. Stay on the base. 2 outs. Guy on third. Best hitter up. Tie game. Vinny gets up, brushes himself off, and says, oh, that wasn't so bad. I could probably get a couple more feet off the base. Now he's like 8 feet off the base, and he's watching Mike's every move, and we're yelling, get back, Vinny! Our coach is yelling, get back, Vinny! We're throwing stuff at him. There's like bats and helmets and balls flying by him. He doesn't see a thing. He's just staring at Mike. We're trying to build a human chain from the dugout when there's not enough of us. We can't get to him. He's just out there on his own. He's staring it down. He's watching Mike's every move. Then he sees Mike go into his windup. You know what he does? You'll find out tonight. Spend the day. We're going to sing a song, but I want you guys to think today, what are you choosing? Who are you choosing as your go-to person? Who do you want to get you through this life? And think about that for tonight, okay? Give yourselves a hand for being so great.